All right. Hi, Lesley. How are you?
Hi, Douglas. I'm good, thank you.
Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Let's see. What do you do? You're a clinical social worker, teacher, author. You're in New York City right now. Yeah.
I am. I wear a lot of hats. Um, I do a lot of work that supports the emotional well-being of children in school settings, childcare, Head Start.
COVID must be a real nightmare for you.
Well, COVID is a nightmare for everyone,
True.
but um, I think what's been challenging is to convert what we do so that it's all virtual during this time. And one of the things that I like to do in life is write. So one of the things I've done with this time is write a lot in a way that I think will be useful for children and parents and teachers.
Are you still working personally with children? Or are you online with them, or what?
I'm online.
Yeah. Okay.
Not my favorite thing, but what's necessary at the moment.
Are you finding a lot of emotional distress with kids right now because of this?
I think that there's a lot of emotional distress for children who are feeling isolated, um, and for parents who are trying to do the impossible mission of caring for their children and working at the same time in the same place, um, and dealing with online schooling and all of the things that everyone is trying to balance. Kids are sponges for adult affect and feelings. So if parents are undone, usually their children are also undone.
Right. If the parents are stressed, the kids will become stressed too. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I've had this conversation with several people who have been on the show, and I think that online learning is fantastic for people at university level. But K through 12, I think the kids need to get out of the house. They need the socialization of other kids, of other adults other than their parents. I don't think it's healthy for them to stay home all day. Aside from that, one of the parents who probably both work, one of them's going to have to stay home if the kids go online. And
Yes.
yeah, I don't think it's a great thing. I mean, it's necessary for now, obviously, but once we get
Yes.
COVID rid of, I think the kids have got to go back to the schoolhouse.
Yes. I think once the crisis has alleviated so that everyone is safe, kids will be so happy to be back. The kids who are back already are so delighted to be in the company of other children.
Yeah, what's the situation in New York City right now? Are the schools open, or are they closed, or
Well, the schools are open, but because there have to be very small groups for it to be done safely, most public school children come into school twice a week and are learning from home the other 3 days of the week. And then if somebody tests positive in their classroom or school community, they have to quarantine for 10 days as a group. So it's a lot of back and forth, a lot of in and out of school.
which is not certainly not ideal because it's sort
No,
of
not ideal.
yeah. So what book are you promoting? I see a whole bunch of books on your bio. Which one are you promoting at this point?
Okay, so what I'm promoting is a book I just wrote for children called Lilah in the Land of the Littles.
Oh, you
Looks
got it
like
there?
that.
Okay.
Um, because one of the things we know about the kind of traumatic experience that we're all living through is that the more you can connect to other people, the better you do. And one of the paradoxes of COVID is that in order to stay physically healthy, you have to stay far away from other people. But in order to stay emotionally healthy, you have to connect with other people. So it's such a strange time. And I feel like children feel better when they know they're not alone. So Lilah in the Land of the Littles is a story about a little girl who is frustrated and bored and lonely because she's home all the time, and her big brother and big sister are always online using all the tech equipment for their school. Her mom is working from home in the living room, and she can't play with her friend who lives a few doors down because her friend's grandmother lives in her house. And in order to protect her, she can't even go to school a few days a week. She has to be home all the time. So that's the beginning of the story. And as the story goes on, Lilah invents a creative solution to her feelings of isolation. Her mom helps her, and her best friends and connection to her best friend sort of gets woven into the story. And when kids hear the story, they look at the person who's reading to them like, oh, that's me. That's what's happening. That's how I feel. And that really helps kids. It really helps kids to know that they're not alone. So that's why I wrote Lilah in the Land of the Littles.
What age group is this book geared towards?
3.5 to 8 years old, the best window.
Okay. Do you think young children, I'm of the opinion that young children have a much more difficult time with isolation than adults. I think adults can handle being alone better. I know it's a stereotype and it's a generalization, but I don't know of many children, young children, that do really well on their own without any kind of socialization with other kids or with other adults. But I know plenty of adults that can lock themselves in a room and be just fine doing whatever they're doing.
I think that young children need to feel like they're connected to somebody, and that's sort of what helps them grow, their interactions with other people. That's what helps them sort of become themselves. That's what helps them figure out who they are. And one of the things that I emphasize in Lilah is that kids need to play to make sense of the things that happen in life. We grown-ups can talk about things if they're intense or difficult or burdensome. Children need to play about them in order to integrate or make emotional sense of them. And in Lilah in the Land of the Littles, she ends up resolving what's going on through her play. And that's one of the upsides of this pandemic is kids are home all the time. If people can sort of carve out space and time for open-ended play, because they're not going to chess and ballet and all the millions of things that they do after school in normal times. They can't do those things, but they can have time to invent and create and be playful. And that's what Lilah does with the dilemmas that she's facing.
I want to go slightly off topic here, but it's kind of relevant to what you were just talking about. Do you think childhood imagination has been stunted by technology?
I worry about that. I really worry about that. I think that one of the things we're doing right now is having very young kids attend to screens for a long time of the day. We're sort of encouraging them to do that. And I don't think that's a good idea. It's not developmentally what's really salient for young kids. But I worry that we're not valuing creativity. And especially in trying times, creativity works as an antidepressant. It's generated by the person as opposed to something coming in on the person. And that's really important. Developmentally, it's important for children, but it's also really important during times like this, where there's a lot of stress that everyone is living with.
So as parents, what can people do? Do they literally have to take the phone and the iPad away from the kids for a certain amount of hours a day and give them a paint set or a blob of clay or something to,
Yeah, I think so, because the devices are really addicting to kids. It's very hard for them to separate from them. Of course, right now, people have survival needs that preclude attending to their kid every second of the day. So it makes sense that we would be overly reliant on technology in this time. But sort of making sure that we're carving out, here comes a kitty, making sure that we're carving out space and time that's just for creative and self-generated play, really, in the long run, is going to be helpful.
I didn't grow up with an iPad in my hand, certainly. I was already in my 30s when the internet came to existence for most of us. And I just see so many kids in strollers that have a phone in their hand while the parents are pushing them along. They're barely old enough to talk, and yet they're already swiping on a phone screen. Yeah, I just don't know. I don't know. I'd rather see them running around and making sandcastles on the beach or something.
I would too. And there's a lot of loss in that strolling parent and child who aren't connecting with each other, because in the olden days, the parent would have been talking with the baby about the things that they see, and the baby would be having an experience beyond being strolled down the street that has to do with the relationship, taking in the world around them through that salient relationship. And we can't lose that. Our children need that. It's like we're always fighting that route of, okay, here's the iPad, here's the phone. I know if I give you this, that will be compelling, and then I'll be able to think, or I'll be able to talk, or I'll be able to organize. And again, I am so grateful at this time. My daughter is 25 and not little during this time, because it's so hard for parents to be doing what they need to do and caring for their kid in optimal ways. And I don't want any parent to feel inadequate about their parenting right now, because that's an awful feeling, and it's impossible to be an ideal parent during a crisis. But using the time well, since we need to be with our children many more hours than typically is true for working parents, using that time well so that there's something that comes out of it that's helpful for everyone, I think is a good thing to think about.
On the plus side of technology, and this is actually a question to see if there is one, is there programs or things online for kids that would stimulate their imagination to a degree similar to physical touch, feel, smell type things?
There are a lot of things that do that, and I'm probably not the one to ask, because there are probably a million more than the ones I know of. So yes, there are some things that are better than other things. The way that if you have your kid watching television and they're watching something that Children's Television Workshop has put out, it's going to be a different experience than if they're just watching a cartoon on a different channel, right? Because one is made with development in mind and the other one isn't. So yeah, there are definitely a range of opportunities for children and parents to sort through. I don't think it takes the place of actual play with objects or actual, interaction with people, but yeah, there is a range of possibility there.
Well, I think the one thing that technology has not replaced yet, that in terms of real human interaction, is the sense of smell and the sense of touch.
Absolutely.
The phone will do sense of sight and sense of hearing, but when you do something for real, you get all four senses. You only get
And
two
when you
on
do
the
something
phone.
for real in the company of an important other person, your relationship with that person holds that experience. That becomes like woven into memory. And that is something that lasts throughout life. And it's important that what we're doing with our children when they're young can be remembered over time as a cozy experience, because it's home, and being safe and cozy at home is foundational for children.
I agree.
It's hard to go out into the world without that experience of being safe and cozy at home within relationships with the adults in your world.
I agree. I don't want the fondest memory of my childhood to be something I found on an iPhone. I really
Right.
don't. I want it to be a memory of my parents, of my friends, of something,
Yeah.
I agree. I agree. Well, Lesley, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing about your book and about things going on in New York